Good evening. My name is Jamie Robinson. I'm the Director of Community Relations and Communications for Metrolinx's Rapid Transit Projects. I'd like to welcome everyone here in the audience and viewing us online online this evening, and welcome you to all Metrolinx's first Management Town Hall. It's my pleasure to be the moderator for this evening's event. Metrolinx is committed to engaging with and informing our neighbors, customers, and the community about the progress we make as we move forward with planning, building, and operating the region's transportation network. We invite all feedback regarding our services and our projects, and I want to thank you again for your interest in joining us here this evening. Before we begin, we have a safety moment. Safety is our first priority, and we'd like to review what to do in case of an emergency or an evacuation while you're here. So if you can see, turn to the monitors that are around the room. There's two types of fire alarms that happen at 97 Front Street here. The first is a slow fire alarm, basically gives a signal that there's something happening, followed by, if there's an emergency, a fast fire alarm. If we need to leave the building, we want to exit out the front of the lobby onto Front Street. We want to go left to the southwest corner of York and Front, and we're going to gather near the metal sculpture for further instructions at that particular point in time. And Kim Johnson, who's just walked in the room, if she's the one who will lead us safely, and just ask in the event that we just proceed very, very orderly behind Kim, and she'll make sure that we all get out very safely. So thank you for that. This town hall event has been designed to allow for as many opportunities for input and feedback to Metrolinx as possible. Those who are not able to join us in person or online were able to submit their questions in advance, and the online community helped to prioritize that question. So we've actually come up with our own top 10 list. For those in the audience, we've got a microphone right here. So we'd like to invite you to form a line when and if you would like to ask a question. And when I recognize you, please provide us with your name, and then your question will may be directed to the panel. For those viewing online, we've got online moderators who will collect your questions and project them onto the screens as well. I'm going to go through the three types of questions that we're going to get. Sort of in order. I'll take the first question that comes from our top 10. The second question, I'll invite a member of the audience to ask a question. And the third one will come from our online viewing community. And I'm going to repeat that sequence for the next 90 minutes until we're all out of questions. We've scheduled the session to last for 1.5 hours, or 7:30 p.m. We'd like to get through as many questions as possible, so we'd like, this is question period, we have nice short questions, and the panel is committed to providing good, crisp, brief answers as well. However, if in event that you've got further questions or follow-up, we've got lots of staff, Metrolinx here, wearing lapels and lanyards around the room, who can take your details and your contact information and can follow up with you at that particular point in time. We aim to make this a productive and ongoing initiative. We're committed to hearing all the feedback and treating you with respect. It is my pleasure now to introduce Phil Verster, President and CEO of Metrolinx, and Phil's going to introduce the rest of his panel and the senior management team members of Metrolinx here this evening. Thanks, Phil.
Thanks, Jamie. Good evening, everyone. So tonight is actually quite a special night for us. This is our first Ask Metrolinx evening. And for us, there are two reasons why this is important. And you can summarize that in two words. The first one's transparency. I'd like to give the community, people like you, because you care, don't you? You can put time, if anyone puts time aside and on a night like tonight, come out in that weather, which I'm still not used to, come out in this weather to come and talk about transit issues. You are the people that care. And similarly, our people that are on the net, that are streaming in and listening to what we are and asking questions, you're also people that care, and we respect that. So the first word that defines tonight is transparency. So tonight, we're going to try and answer your questions. If you think you came here tonight to get all of the answers crisply prepared and well rehearsed, anything like that, no, we don't. We haven't done that. So we're here to listen as much as to answer. So tonight, when you don't get exactly the answer you're after, that doesn't mean we know something we don't want to tell you. Yeah. So we want to set the tone for these Ask Metrolinx sessions going forward. We learn from every interaction with our communities. The fact that we're having the session is an important diversion for us from where the old policy was or old approaches were, and we want to get a better understanding of what are the issues that are important to you. Clearly, we're going to have answers of sorts, our answers, and we're going to listen to what your answers are, and maybe we take things away and we all get to a better place. The second word, which is important tonight, is courtesy. So in order to make this a success, we are really open. We're not going to hold back. And so in terms of anything we know, we're going to share with you where we are as best we can. And so what we ask for is that in order to make this a success, we all need to keep in mind there are many people in the room that want to ask questions. Our moderator is pretty good at managing crowds like this. Please work with him. And let's give everyone an opportunity to participate, and that'll be much appreciated. So from me, thank you very much for being here tonight, and I hope you have a good evening. Thank you.
Phil, did you want to introduce the rest of the
I'd let the
panel?
team introduce themselves.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Greg Percy. I'm Chief Operating Officer for Metrolinx.
Thanks, Greg. Leslie Wu, Chief Planning Officer with Metrolinx.
Peter Zook, I am the Chief Capital Officer.
I'm Rob Hollis. I'm in charge of the Presto program for Metrolinx.
Mary Martin, Metrolinx's General Counsel.
Judy Pfeiffer, Communications, Public Affairs, and Community Relations, if you're coming to speak about that.
Hi, it's Robert Siddle, CFO for Metrolinx.
Hi, Anita Saltmanis, Chief Customer Experience and Marketing Officer for Metrolinx. Hi, Helen Ferreira-Walker, Human Resources for Metrolinx.
Thanks, Helen, and thanks, team. So let's get right to it. So the first question we're going to put up is the #1 voted question that we received online. And just a little bit of context for folks, we invited questions on our Metrolinx Engage platform. We had over 170 entries, and so this is our top question that was asked of us. So the question is, the Union Station Rail Corridor East, south of Longboat Avenue, has train operations noise levels far above max recommended levels. Constraint with respect to the train yard and 6 to 9 tracks maintenance and construction work overnight during the work week and on weekends on top of regular traffic make it unbearable for residents. This construction will last 8 to 10 years. Metrolinx is adding a new track just 15 meters from our bedrooms. When will Metrolinx finally construct the noise wall and or provide noise proofing of the adjacent residences? That's coming from Sabina. So who can I invite to answer that question? Greg?
Thanks, Jimmy. Yeah, there's a lot going on at Union Station. It is the hub of our system. We have 70 million passenger trips a year. 94, I think, % of them all go through Union Station in some way. There's a lot of track capacity there, but we're building more. And I think we understand the concerns of the Longboat community. I think for us, it's achieving a balance between getting that work done, but also respecting the community that is right beside us. And that's easier said than done, but I think it starts with really good communication, and I think we can do a better job of that. I think we sometimes get focused on getting the build done, and because we have service immediately the next morning or that evening, but I think we can do a better job in advance of letting people know what's going on. I think by doing that, at least it's first of all transparent, to Phil's earlier point, but I think it also gives you a chance to adjust to that where you can. And I think the direction we've gone is I've offered to sit in on a community meeting in January to give a lot more detail as to what we're doing. Because I don't think I know we don't want to hide it, because it's about upgrading the plant so that we can handle more people coming in and out of Toronto. And our Regional Express Rail program is all about moving more people and connecting communities within and around Toronto. So my commitment is to improve the communication, and so that we can make sure that we respect the residents in the area.
And Greg, I'll be out there with you in January. We go and hear from the community directly what's happening there, and we talk with them about the things that we can do to make sure that we're able to operate our train service and do our building and still make it a place where people are able to live their lives.
I think there's one thing we've heard from many communities as we are embarking on RER and embarking on changing our service patterns, and this is about noise walls. And what we find is that communities and some corridors have questions about when is it happening, how is it happening, when is it going to get procured, when is it going to get built, when are the services increasing, and then some of the answers on one corridor gets confused with questions on another corridor, and people are saying, well, why don't we have noise walls on our part of the network? Why does that part of the network get noise walls? And you can just see that some of the technical issues around noise walls, such as the environmental assessment and what the rules are and how the applications work and how it gets decided upon, is not necessarily widely disseminated or widely understood. So one of the things we are going to do, and Raj is leading that on our side, which is a very exciting thing for us, is to put a leaflet together, a booklet together that explains noise walls and what we're going to do with noise walls, what approvals we've got, what walls are going to be built, where they're going to get built, what a noise wall is. Also, explain to the communities what noise walls cost and sort of the scale and size of it. Many people think it's just a simple noise wall, a simple construction. These are actually fairly expensive constructions with retaining walls, earth retaining walls, and are hugely expensive investments. Not saying it's not necessary, saying we do that where the law requires us to do that, and we continue to actively pursue noise walls wherever wherever we can get permission to put them in and funding to put them in. And so we'll do something like that in the next couple of months, and I think that'll help quite a lot of communities to understand where noise walls in their particular community applies and where it'll be built and when it'll be built, and also give you a sense of how it's designed and what the size of it is.
Thanks, Greg, Peter, and Phil for that answer, and thanks, Sabina, for that question. Invite the first question from the microphone here, and just to let folks know that are in the audience, this is where the microphone will be, and we'll queue people up as we go forward. So, sir, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I would just like to point out that these ladies and gentlemen are doing a lot of work, and I know my question is in regards to the LRT, and I know there's the Eglinton Crosstown LRT, Finch West, there's here Ontario, Ottawa, Hamilton. There's so many things that these people are doing, and to give us their time to be heard, to give us the people who want and use public transit to be heard, I think that's worth a round of applause. I'd like to give them a round of applause for letting us be heard. My name is Grant Gorczynski, and 21 months ago I started advocating for a community group in Kingsbridge. The residents of Kingsbridge in central Mississauga are home to the second most densely populated area along the 20-kilometer Huron-Ontario LRT track. There are 22 designated stations. Kingsbridge, already home to 9 massive condominium buildings, is not one of them. More than 14,000 people live and commute to Kingsbridge, a number that is going to double because Alaya Corporation is developing 2.5 million square feet of condos and apartments. Furthermore, over 1,000 persons with disabilities habitually travel to facilities at Kingsbridge for medical treatment, employment training, counseling, and support. Ontario is striving to be an inclusive province for persons with disabilities by 2025 through the AODA Act. With the current design, the spirit of the Act is not being respected. This is not an inconvenient situation. This is an incredibly dangerous situation because this vulnerable group of people, which is already marginalized in society, is being forced to cross 3 high-traffic intersections. People with cognitive and physical challenges, many in wheelchairs, have to literally put their lives at risk to access the services they need at Kingsbridge after disembarking at Eglinton.
Can we get to the question, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Kingsbridge needs an LRT stop. I've done the painstaking research right here in regards to the distances between stops. I've analyzed the ride time impact. I've even looked at the cost of this.
So you can leave that with us, which would be terrific. So
No
if you ask a
problem.
question, I'm sure the panel would love to answer it.
I was gonna say, you can analyze this and you can say no if station's too close to the next one, if it's not in the budget. But the question is Metrolinx giving up on this community, or is Metrolinx going to step up and help this community?
Good. Thank you for your question.
So thanks for the question. It's Grant, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Grant. So Grant, look, great work, great initiative. What I would like to see is I would like us to have a look at that.
I would love that.
And so Leslie and her team does very little else. She's going to laugh when I say that. Yep. But there's very little else but think about what the network should look like for the communities it serves. And what stops we have and where the stops are. This is not about giving up on any community. This is very often about just making choices at the time. And times move on, and community builds move on, and planning decisions move on. And so there's always opportunities to look at what we have in the network and how the network can expand. Have you got your name on that?
Absolutely.
So we can contact you as well after that.
Yeah.
All right, Grant. Leave it with us, and we'll definitely look at that.
A member of Parliament. I'm happy to get you a personalized copy if you want. You can
Good.
take that one. But
Thanks very much for that. Really appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Grant.
okay.
Thank you.
All right. So can I follow up with this? 'Cause I
We'll
know
look
we've
at that.
been-
Yeah.
We'll look at that, and we'll come back to you.
Okay.
We'll follow up with you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Grant. Great.
Do we have any questions from the online community yet, folks? We do. Here's one here. You can see it again. Folks direct around the screen. You can have a look at it. I'll read it for everyone to see. Are there any plan to expand the 407 GO Bus services for intercity commutes such that the GO Bus doesn't need to travel on the already congested 401 in Gardner? The current route and schedule seems to center around York U students, but I imagine non-students would want to take advantage of intercity commutes. This question is coming to us online from Kenny. Who might want to respond to that? Greg has got his hand up.
Thanks, Kenny. We have about 2,500 bus trips a day. We continue to look and refine the routes and how we link those routes together to each other for efficiencies to make it also more convenient for current and new customers. So we would take a look at that. We give our drivers the option of, based on discretion, traffic conditions, on whether they go on the 407 or not. Sometimes 407's faster, sometimes not. So we give them that call. But we continuously look. So we certainly would take a look at what you suggested, and we'll work it into the mix. But with 2,500 bus trips per day in the greater Toronto Hamilton area, there's always a way to optimize a little better. So we will take a look. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Leslie, you have something to add?
So I think some people may know that we are currently reviewing our regional transportation plan, and one of the key elements that we talk about in the plan is the concept of a frequent rapid transit network. The 407 as a corridor is an ideal corridor for us to expand what we refer to as express regional bus, and this is an area that we're looking at. I think Greg talked about what we can do in the short term, but in kind of the medium and longer term, the opportunities for greater intercity, faster, more frequent connectivity is very much on our radar.
Great. Thanks, Greg, and thanks, Leslie, for that answer. And thanks, Kenny, for the question. So we're going to go back to our top 10 questions that came in. The number 2 question was, can we get a breakdown of where our fare dollars go? And this is coming from someone called This Crazy Train. Who would like to answer this question?
I'll take the answer, the crazy train.
Thanks, Robert.
And again, your dollars, we receive a lot of funding from the various governments. It primarily covers the capital infrastructure programs that we're developing. Your fare dollars go to support the operations, primarily in the transit area. So we have approximately $570 million that we're expecting in our business plan for this year in transit fare revenue. That covers a portion of the $870 million we have in expenses in terms of operating. So your fares are going to directly to cover the operations of transit in this region.
Great. Thanks, Robert. We're next going to take another question from our live audience. Sir, if you could tell us your name.
Sure. My name is Bill Baker. I'm a curling member at Scarborough Golf and Country Club. And I'm here because there's, as you're probably aware, grade separation occurring to expand the Metrolinx service on the Lakeshore East line at Scarborough Golf Club Road. And as part of that grade separation, the entrance to our Golf and Country Club needs to move. As a result of that, the board at our club has decided that against Metrolinx's suggestion, we thank you for your suggestion, but the board has decided to route the new driveway through our curling club and knock down a facility that's been there for 60 years and displace about 300 curlers. That now it's only one of 2 curling clubs in the city of Scarborough, and the other club is full. So we're at a loss here, and what we're hearing from the board, though, is that I'll use the term, it's a sweetheart deal that they're getting from Metrolinx, that there are millions of dollars coming to this private country club in compensation for moving the driveway, and including paying for the tear down of our curling club and the building of a new maintenance facility at the Golf and Country Club. It just doesn't seem to be a very fair way of treating the curlers, never mind the taxpayers' dollars that go into, as we just heard, funding all of this stuff that you guys do. So
Comment? Sure.
Yeah, the question is, how much money is Scarborough Golf and Country Club actually getting out of this deal?
So I can't, my name is Judy, I can't give you the specific answer right now, but what I can tell you is that we've committed to establish a working group, a communications working group with the golf course, and we're creating a community advisory committee. And through those 2 channels and through me going back to you personally, I can get you that information at a later time, but I don't have that information with me tonight.
Okay, but what, Judy, just, it's important that we give some other clarity here. With situations like this, we don't do sweetheart deals. So what we do and what we have to do is if we have a part of the network that needs to be redesigned, we have to buy property to get grade separation built and to get that type of infrastructural changes made.
The property was worth $8,000 that you're buying.
So yeah, let me follow through. So whatever view you may have about the property, whatever view we may have about the property, in the end, we don't do this because we go out on a whim and say, well, we'll just give them 800,000 if it's 8,000. We can't. I mean, just think. Let's think through the practicalities. We have to go and procure property. We have to procure it at market price, and so we've got people that go out and do all of the land assessment and land reviews, and so in the end, we come up with something that's a solution to build the network onwards. Now, what they do on their own property, because I assume what they did with a curling club is because it's on your property or not. I don't know all of the facts around that, but that's not anything to do with us really. We've just done our transaction on our bit, and what they do is their part. Now, I'm just sort of wanting to give you, I don't want you to travel here and not have a half-decent answer and be told you're going to hear something later on. So
yeah, I just want to
give you a sense of this, is that, so we don't go around just flushing money away for nothing.
Yeah, and I don't expect that you should.
Okay.
And I know I fully believe you.
Yeah.
I think the issue here is that the members at the club are being misled by their board, and they're being told that they are going to get all of this money from Metrolinx, and I don't think it's the case. So I want to know what they're actually getting, so we can go back and correct the situation.
Right. So we will do that. We will get you whatever information is there. It's not commercially sensitive or anything like that. But what information relates to your question, we'll get to you. I just wanted you to have a sense of how it works as well, so that I can see this is a passionate issue for you. And look, it's not good to hear about the curling club if it's one of 2 clubs that are being closed. It's perhaps an unintended consequence of some of our work. I can assure it's not an intended consequence. So are you okay that we'll come back to you with some information on that?
Yep. You know, I had talked to Judy, but I just wanted to put the question out in public. So thank you.
It's great that you've done it. Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Thank you for your time, sir. We're going to go back to the online community. So we got another question coming up from the people viewing online. I'll read this out to everyone. What is being done to update the business cases in the new business cases review? In other words, what is Metrolinx doing to update them and address concerns? This is coming from Randy online. Who would like to talk about that? Leslie?
I can start. Thank you, Randy, for the question. It's a timely question because actually just at our last board meeting in December, we presented the formal way that we're going to progress with business case and benefits management in terms of our decision-making in the organization. So most projects begin with a degree of feasibility work, and we then complete an initial business case. The business case is our mechanism for understanding the sort of general direction and scope of a project or program. It enables us to move through to what I call our first decision point or stage gate. There are a subsequent 3 other types of business cases that each progress into higher degrees of detail as projects and programs progress to higher degrees of detail, and each enable a project to move through in the decision making around funding through our program, what we have going. And so a lot of the business cases that we have put out in the last year or 2 are now completed as initial business cases. We'll be coming forward with our full business case on the RER program. We will be coming forward in the new year in February with our preliminary design business cases, the second generation of business cases on all the new station locations for the RER, Regional Express Rail program. And that is now more formally, as of last board meeting, formalized and on the public record how we will be utilizing the business cases to help decision makers in their decision making. It's important to remember that a business case is one of several factors that go into advice that is given or a decision for any other levels of government or other agencies to think about. So I hope that it was a bit long, I apologize, but I think Phil might want to fill in a few little blanks.
So if everyone heard exactly what Leslie said, I just want to say some of what she said again, just to make sure it is simple and understood. Leslie made it absolutely clear that business cases are but one of the multiple things that affect how an elected official makes a decision. Our business cases aren't a law unto itself. Our business cases are what the benefits and cost from a transit perspective is. And elected officials who are elected based on what they commit to the public in our democratic process control the budgets. And so therefore they can decide on what we call multi-factor decision making on other reasons, such as it's socially important to invest in an area, it is perhaps a policy fit to invest in an area, and those reasons may be other than what we have. So please, when you look at our business cases, keep in mind, exactly like Leslie spelled it out, multi-factor decision making. And if an elected official make a decision different to our advice, that's not a wow moment, that's democracy. Yeah, so that is how we just like to stress that. We understand the tension in the public domain on transparency and decisions like this, but this is how it works all throughout the world in transit. So just want to restate that.
Okay. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Phil, and thank you for that question, Randy. For those of you who've joined us late or who've come online since we began the program at 6 o'clock, my name is Jamie Robinson and I'm from Metrolinx, and you're here at our first Management Town Hall meeting. We've got a terrific panel of Metrolinx senior executives on the panel and also other senior management team members here to answer your questions that you have for us. If you've got questions, please submit them online if you're watching online. And we have made a commitment that answers will be provided on the Metrolinx website within a couple of weeks to every question that comes into us. Now we're going to start again, and we're going to go back to the top 10 questions. This is the number 3 ranked question. A lot of interest in the Burlington GO Station. Why is the Burlington GO Station renovation entering its 6th year?
Well, the good news is that we've reached substantial completion there and it's done. And the contractor is finishing up the last few details and it will be fully complete. But the truth of the matter is when we started 6 years ago, we didn't get everything quite right. And every time that we move, every time that we build something, it being a railway, we are on a corridor where there's lots of utilities, and we encountered utilities that were not intended at the time that we began that work in Burlington, and that was an issue. That issue led to an interruption in the power supply because the utility that we needed to connect was the one that was going to supply power to the new station. So there was an interruption at the beginning. The other thing that we encountered there was contractor performance. We did not have a contractor who performed uniformly well during the process, something that we do here routinely now as a result of some of these experiences is a vendor management program where we make sure that we take into account past performance when we select a contractor. So we're very sorry that it took longer than it needed to take for the Burlington station to be complete. I was just out there myself last week. It is beautiful, and it is going to be there for a long time. Wish it had been there sooner.
Okay. Thanks, Peter. I'm going to now back to invite the next question from the live audience. And just remind folks that if you are coming up to the mic, please, a lot of interest and a lot of questions, and want to keep it short so we give as many people an opportunity. So, sir?
Okay, I'm Michael Rosenberg. This is about purchase of services by the TTC from Metrolinx. And it should be simply a purchase of service issue, and that Metrolinx should not be involved in the pricing decision as to how those services are then resold to the customer. So, that includes situations like the kind of Lawrence-Eglinton connection in Scarborough. I don't know what's fully going on there, but I assume that some kind of negotiation will eventually have to happen, and I would like to see that the Metrolinx essentially stays out of the question of how that is priced to the customer. I'm talking about TTC customers using Go rather than the other question of Go customers using TTC. And on the question of Presto, there's an issue of the transferable medium, single-use medium. TTC seems to want to price those at a higher price. I'm very price sensitive in both those issues of traveling around the city and on giving out transferable mediums. I have a group where I give out about 100 transferable mediums, which are currently tokens, but will be replaced. I give those out. Those people will lose those free mediums from me if there's any price change. So I'm not entirely happy with what the TTC is doing on those kinds of issues, but from a point of view of Metrolinx, I would like to see you leave that decision to the TTC, and any of those contracts. I believe that's the case with Presto, but with the issue of stations and use of Go services within the City of Toronto, I think you should basically have a contract for purchase of services and leave the pricing to the customer up to the TTC, and I'd like to know if that is in fact your negotiating position on those matters.
Thank you for the question, sir. Phil?
Right, so first of all, thank you very much. I can see there's quite a lot of thought into that, and you've got quite a number of issues that are of concern. I think maybe if we focus on the Presto part of your question, would that help? Because I think the very clear separation between TTC decisions and Metrolinx decisions in terms of our respective pricing policies. So I can.
I think that is the case on Presto. I'm wondering if that will also be the case on the use of tracks, whether it be something like the Main to downtown connection or the Lawrence-Eglinton connection. Will you simply sell that service to the TTC and let the TTC decide if there's a premium price on that or not? Obviously, I'm hoping not.
I just think in terms of a customer interface, you just don't have to worry about that. What happens between us and TTC is not something that translates into management of infrastructure, and that's an issue totally separate to what the pricing decisions are out in the public domain. So I can give you that assurance that if there's a pricing question, you can by all means refer the pricing question on TTC issues to TTC, a pricing question on Metrolinx to us. Don't worry too much about what happens behind the scenes, because quite a lot of these things are funded in terms of projects which deliver economic benefits to the community. And so these projects aren't priced up in order to make links between Metrolinx is charging TTC, therefore the fare goes up. It doesn't work like that. So if I can give you that assurance. Maybe, Robert, do you want to pick up on just on the Presto angle?
Yes, happy you asked that question. So, as you know, we're midway rolling out on the TTC, and right now the Presto card is the main media for you to tap your way through. But coming next year, to your question about single rides and tokens, coming next year, there's a new limited use media single ride ticket that will be coming out that you'll be able to purchase singly, and you can provide those to your friends or to your corporation to get a single ride. So they are coming next year. It's all part of the phased rollout for the TTC. Now, as to the pricing of those media, as it is today, TTC sets the pricing for their fares. That will continue, so we haven't contemplated what their pricing will be in the new media, but the availability of a single ride ticket will come next year, for sure.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that question. Thank you for the answer. Going to the online community again? Yes, no? Thanks, Ania. This is coming in from Maria online. What is Metrolinx doing to improve signal or equipment issues? For example, the morning commute delays on Lakeshore East today due to signal issues were unacceptable. Greg?
Thanks, Maria. You're absolutely right. They were unacceptable. We had two things happen this morning on the Lakeshore East. One, we had an investigation issue that was close to the west part of the Lakeshore East corridor, if you will, and that sorted itself out. And right after, we had a switch failure closer to Whitby, and we're still fixing that one. We put a clamp on it to get us by the rush hour this afternoon, and then we're going to send a team in to make it right later. But yes, we do apologize for the inconveniences for this morning, because and it's hard to understand, it's a bit counterintuitive, but in some cases we canceled trains to make sure the other ones wouldn't be delayed as badly. But that did cause crowding on trains. So we hear it from our own employees who ride the Lakeshore East as well. So it was not up to our standard of service this morning on the Lakeshore East, and we commit to making it better.
And of course, Greg, what we're doing to improve signals and equipment is we're rebuilding these things, and our program of improvements is going to not only improve the reliability of the railway, but it's going to provide more frequent service. So while we always feel bad when we're not able to deliver, we're hoping to deliver a lot more for you in the future.
Great, thanks.
As soon as we possibly can.
Thanks, Greg, and thanks, Peter. Phil, did you? No? Okay, great. We're now going to go back to our top 10 questions. I think we're on to number 4 now. That was online. Thank you. That's good. I'm glad to see people are keeping me honest. So the next question is, again, from our top 10 list. What is Metrolinx doing to limit government interference? Who wants to take that hot potato?
I'll take that one very easily. The question doesn't make sense. Yeah? Question just doesn't make sense. Oh, yes, it makes sense. No, let me follow through, sir. So let me follow through. When you think about investment in infrastructure, government makes those decisions. So we'd expect government to make decisions on infrastructure. And that is how it is. Government has a revenue earning capability through their taxation process. Metrolinx don't. Our statute does not make us an entity that charge for our services. So we're dependent on decisions that government takes. And so we can do what we should do. According to our guideline and our mandate and our operational instruction from the minister, it's very clear. We should give transport advice and we should implement the programs that government's approved. And that's what we do. And so I think it's really important to get that right. Government makes decisions. This is why we talked about multi-factor decision making and talked about how government will make decisions based on multiple factors that they consider is the right investment to make. And if we give advice, the advice is given as one part of that decision. And I think that's it. It's no more complicated than that. Thank you very much.
Good. Thanks for that question. And just for those of you who came in late again or who are watching online, the fellow answering the question there is Phil Verster, who's the president and CEO of Metrolinx. Now I'm going to turn to the next question on the room.
Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Rhoda Potter. I am president of Agincourt Village Community Association. I'm here to ask about safety. Specifically, safety for our children who cross just between Finch and Shepherd Avenue, 5 crossings where our children cross to go to 7 schools, and they cross at grade level. Stouffville corridor is upset, fearful, and dismayed. The trains were increased. We are not saying stop the trains, but we are saying please do something now to provide safety for our children, our seniors, and our community. How and when will Metrolinx work with the City of Toronto, the province, and your people to ensure the safety of our children?
Thank you for that question, Rona. Phil?
Hey, Rhoda, it's good to see you, and it's good to greet you and have a conversation before the session started. And I'm very keen to come and visit and have that coffee you promised. So that's a deal, isn't it? So Rhoda, as you know, Anthony's been working very closely with you, and we've got a lot of attention on level crossings, and we look at all of the crossings according to very clear guidelines from Transport Canada in terms of how we make them safe, and how we make them safe for the service patterns that we've got. And our priorities are to invest, and we do the surveys and we check how busy the crossings are, we compare it to train service, and that's what drives the overall investment profile. And the visit that Anthony and myself have got planned to come out there and have a look will give me some personal clarity on it. And as you know, some of those level crossings are getting attention and investment on them already. No. So
nothing.
So
nothing has happened in 3 years. Nothing.
Yeah, but it's in. I think when we come and see you, we'll talk you through what the plans are around the crossings. There's 2 or 3 that are involved, isn't there? There's 2 or 3 crossings.
There are 5 crossings between Finch and Shepherd.
Yeah,
and 7 schools.
Yeah, but I think there are 2 or 3 of them that are critically affecting crossings with traffic flows on them that requires that to become attention. So when we come and see you, we'll discuss those with you and we'll take it from there.
Thank you very much.
Great.
Thank you very much, Rhoda.
Thanks, Phil, and thanks, Rhoda, for that question. We're now going back to the online community. This question's coming in from Ben. Can the panel explain why Regional Expressway, or RER plans, include a new track, EO, to be positioned within 50 meters of residential houses? Metrolinx's own guidelines recommend 150-meter separation between homes and tracks.
Well, for good or bad, our trains and our service are much closer to people than the question is suggesting. And we have a job with our noise mitigation and our safety procedures to make sure that our railways are safe when we do that. We do try to put observe 150-meter separation between homes and trains when it's possible to do so, but there are those cases where we have to put them safely in a position closer to deliver the service.
Okay. Thanks, Peter. Peter is the Chief Capital Officer of Metrolinx, if people were wondering who was answering that question. Next question, we're going to go back to the top 10 list. Number 5 on the list, this is coming from James. Wants to look about questions regarding electrification of GO Transit. Why not stick with what works?
Well, electrification is going to allow us to deliver more and better service to people. Electrification is the vehicle by which we're going to take what is essentially today morning peak service, evening peak service, and turn it into 15-minute service on all our lines that would be well connected to light rail and bus service and better serve our customers. What we have works, but we need more of it, and electrification is a way for us to get that.
I think that question may pertain to hydrogen as well. And so the suggestion that catenary systems work and hydrogen is new is probably at the heart of that question. And so would like to say that Ontario is very, very ambitious. And you just need to be, and I've been here 2 months now, and I've just got a sense that Toronto is ambitious as a city. You look at the mayor's plans, and those are fantastic and exciting plans. You look at Ontario on a provincial scale, the plans are as exciting and as innovative. And there's a real opportunity to think about hydrogen as an alternative method of propulsion that can give us, as Peter says, those very important electric trains that are cheaper to operate, more cost-effective to operate, and cleaner. And so what we want to explain to our communities and want to, in response to this question as well, is that we're not saying hydrogen is the right answer, but what we have set up as a procurement process is a procurement process that allows bidders that's going to bid RER to either provide hydrogen trains or to provide electric trains. And because the bidders are building the infrastructure as well, it'll be their risk choice to make in terms of whether they put catenary-based systems up or whether they go for hydrogen. And I think that's really important. And if we can get a hydrogen solution implemented in Ontario, that'll be a world first. It'll be a very different solution to what's out there currently. We're not saying that we're not saying either way it should be a catenary-based system or hydrogen-based system. We want the supply chain to make that risk-based decision because they have to deliver it on time and to budget. And why that is important is our objective here is not hydrogen or electrical. Our objective here is to build an infrastructure that can quadruple the number of services we run per week from 1,500 to 6,000. And so our objective is to focus on our customers and what shape it takes in the end, whether it's a catenary-based system or hydrogen-based system is neither here nor there. It's going to be really important to make sure that we manage the risks, to make sure we deliver it at the most cost-effective price and at the most cost-effective schedule.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks, Peter. And thanks, James, for submitting that question online. Sir, next question from the audience.
Yes, my name's Doug Brown. I'm chair of Burlington for Accessible Sustainable Transit and also co-host of Transit Talk, a monthly show on CFMU radio. My question is pretty fundamental. The original big move, with all that those billions of dollars of funding for the system, initially identified 25% to go to the municipalities, and of that 25%, 15% was to go to the local transit systems. And that has quietly disappeared. Our problem is not in GO train service or GO bus service. Our problem is getting around town and getting to the GO station. My question is, where did that commitment go to local transit? Burlington and Hamilton in particular, their systems are in decline. We have in Burlington half-hour GO service, meaning hourly service buses. It doesn't make sense. The other thing too is first mile, last mile. It seems that the GO approach is you drive to the GO station and we build bigger and bigger parking structures and instead of putting money into transit so people leave the car at home.
Yes. Leslie is chomping to answer that question.
Well, no, because there's two parts to it. First of all, I think, if I'm correct, the reference to the 25% and the 15% came out of the investment strategy that we put forward in 2013, which was a report that provided some options for how we would begin to sustainably fund transit and transportation in the region. And it was linked to the ambitions and the projects set out in the original Big Move in 2008. So in terms of where did it go, it went as advice to the government, and those options for how we deal with funding the whole entire network and the system still hold today in terms of options. What I would say to the point, it is our view that the first mile, last mile is the unconquered aspect of this whole region, insofar as we've made incredible advances in the commitments to build out the skeleton of expanding our rapid transit, but we are now very much challenged, and our draft regional transportation plan speaks to the challenge about completing the trip. So we need to work more closely with local municipalities. There's a whole range of new players from the private sector in areas such as the shared economy around drive share and car share and so forth. So I think we would agree with you that that is an important part of completing the network, and we remain committed to move that forward post haste.
But the 15%, that by my math, that would be about $300 million annually to GTA transit systems. That would result in significant improvements.
Yes, so I think that was that's exactly our finding around the gaps that need to be filled, not only on the capital side but on the operating side, because the plan for the big move was a plan for the entire region, for all 11 operators, for all the municipalities to move forward.
Great. Thank you very much. Leslie is our Chief Planning Officer, if folks are wondering who is answering that question. Next, we're going to turn to another question coming to us from folks who are watching this online. This is coming from Chris. Can we get an update regarding the Bowmanville extension, and when could construction possibly start?
Well, the Bowmanville extension is in our plans. We're doing the environmental assessment necessary to do that, and we are working with our partners to get that into the ground as soon as possible. I don't have a specific date when construction could begin, but we can follow up with a response to that.
The only other thing I would add is the extensions to Bowmanville, as well as the other extensions, are now being well integrated into the Regional Express Rail program, so they will be complementary to the timeline and phasing of that program.
Great. Thanks very much. Folks, Peter Zook, who answered the question to begin with, is our Chief Capital Officer at Metrolinx. We're now going to go to our top 7, or top 10, our top 10 list, and question number 7. Why isn't there a Park Lawn GO station as opposed to Mimico? It's coming from John.
Thank you, John. That's a very good question. In June of last year, we it was the sort of a big stage in our assessment of where we think new stations could be along the GO system with the planning for the regional express rail and that high level of system. Park Lawn was one of the locations that we examined. We also took a good look at Mimico. We will be, as I mentioned earlier, if you hadn't heard earlier when we talked about the business cases, we are now bringing forward, because that was one of the requests from our board, to do further work on the Park Lawn location. We have to coordinate with the City of Toronto, who are doing a transportation master plan in and around that area, getting a better understanding of what the land uses, the densities are going to, where the city is going to attribute, or how much density they think they can attribute to that location, because that will have an impact on the ability for that location to sustain a station. So in the new year, this will be one of several preliminary design business cases that we will bring forward that give us a better understanding of whether Park Lawn and or Mimico are suitable for the Regional Express Rail program.
Great. Thanks, Leslie. Next question from our audience.
My name is Sabina Sormova, and I'm here on behalf of Longboat Association, and I also represent Caroline Co-op Association here. I understand that you like to use specific metrics to guide your decisions, and I have some metrics that hopefully will guide you to right decision for noise mitigation in our area. Ministry of Transport has published guidelines on maximum levels of transport noise. Those are approximately 50 and 55 decibel for day and night. My community is facing those about 15 to 20 decibels higher, and that's just from the operations point of view. Since September, we have been facing onslaught of construction. And in October, some of this construction registered 100 decibel. For those who are not familiar, this is approximately jet engine outside of your window. During that time, I have received calls and emails from my residents. For example, father who had his children screaming in fright, and he didn't know what to tell them because we did not receive any notification of the construction. Another father told me that his son called 911 because he thought that the train hit his house, because we also had extremely high levels of vibrations of our house associated with that construction. I would like to ask, what exactly are you ready to do based on these metrics and these levels of noise for my community?
So
Thank you.
Sabrina, can you just remind me exactly what part of the network do you live?
So between Jarvis and Parliament, just
right.
north
Yeah,
of
so,
train tracks.
So I think Greg talked about the broad principles about that. So I'll give the mic to Greg as well. Just like to say, thank you for sharing that. I mean, I understand. In the night when teams work, it's noisy. There are sometimes lights can be directed at houses. There are things we can do better. And there are things we are focusing on, and Greg will talk you through that. There are more things we can do working with communities to make sure notification is there. And then I think it's useful that Peter talk about what we're doing with regard to standards. And you may have picked up earlier, or when I'm not sure whether you were in the room when we started off and we talked about what we're going to do with regard to publishing more clearly what the noise wall and investment in noise walls are, and what environmental regulations govern that, and how the levels of noise gets interpreted into the decision-making process. Your question, though, is a really important one, and I'd like Greg to talk a little bit about what we're doing operationally to make sure that impact is lessened.
I would like to also point that the construction is going on between Monday and Friday on work nights, so we are not getting any sleep. And I have spoken with seasoned transportation industry professionals, and they told me that noise walls are the cheapest thing to build.
Thank you.
Sabina, thank you for the question. The Union Station is the hub of our system, as you may know. Some 94% of our customers travel through Union Station either by bus or by train. We continuously upgrade the corridor so that we can safely handle more trains and therefore more passengers. And so there will be continuous noise in some parts of the Union Station rail corridor. What we need to do a better job of is advising your neighborhood when we're going to do that. And we need to give you notice of that type of work. Unfortunately, that type of work is complex. It involves heavy construction machinery, and trains are part of that to bring in supplies and so forth. That's really hard to avoid, but if we tell you in advance what we're doing, better yet, even if we can tell you a month in advance what we plan to do, then you can at least adjust to that a little bit. And what I've committed to do, and I'd be joined by my colleague Peter Zook, is we'll come to a meeting in January to walk through in some detail what we're doing and why we're doing it. So we'd be happy to do that.
Great. Thanks, Greg. Peter, do you want
And
to?
we'll also discuss what more we can do, because we're in this together. It's a long-term relationship. There are things, noise walls in cases where they're required or where they're most appropriate. There are other forms of sound mitigation that we can work with you to put in place for the most critical problems that you face. So I will be with Greg out in the community. We will do our very best to make this a livable situation for you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming this evening. We're back to the online community. From a question from Debbie. Union Station is at capacity. How will you improve safety and flow with increased service? Peter, want to take a shot at that?
Well, while it seems like it's at capacity, we actually are going to be at Union Station at least through 2040. And we're working there now to improve our platforms, to make it a more user-friendly place in which to go to our services or to spend some time. So we're constantly working with the City of Toronto to make sure that the things that are happening at Union Station and that are construction are handled in a way which keeps them safe. Safety is a very important thing to us. We're going to stay focused on this, and there are improvements on the way for the flow of traffic at Union Station.
So Peter, do you want to give a little bit of an explanation of some of the things we're going to do, such as the platform's going to be wider?
Well, the plan is that there's going to be less tracks going into Union Station, but that gives us the opportunity to have wider platforms. And with those wider platforms, we will be improving the safety of access on trains. We will be then also improving the access through elevators, stairways, perhaps escalators by which folks will get to the trains. So there is going to be a long-term program of improvement of our pedestrian flow and access to our trains, which will be safer and better.
And Debbie, just to add to what Peter says, with wider platforms and better flows of passengers, those flows will be safer. But what is also really important to understand is with safer pedestrian flows, and part of what we want to do is to get level boarding in place. We can then get trains to flow through Union Station faster rather than the current operational method, which requires alignment of the train with the people of reduced mobility platform. And so you're right, your question is a really good one. Union Station, as it's operated today, is close to capacity. But with the changes we're going to make, we're going to get much more flexibility out of it in the future. And Greg and his team, and Peter and his team, and the whole organization is geared to achieve that. Union Station is our most critical node to get right in the next couple of years.
Can I just add, am I allowed to add one more thing?
100%.
Just to, in the medium to short term, when we open the Bay Concourse, when the connection to the TTC subway station, what is referred to as the moat, is opened up, when more of the construction sort of shifts away. Right now, there's 2 platforms that can't be in use because of construction. The real capacity of Union will become more available, in addition to what Peter's talking about, the additional further capacity. So it's at capacity now because we've actually constrained it because of construction.
Great. Thanks, Leslie. Folks, we're about 2/3 of the way through our program. If you just tuned in or come in a little late in the audience, just wanted to say you're at the Metrolinx Management Town Hall. We got a terrific panel here from folks from left to right. Phil Verster, President and Chief Executive Officer. Greg Percy, who's our Chief Operating Officer. Leslie Wu, who's our Chief Planning Officer. And Peter Zook, who's our Chief Capital Officer. Hopefully I got all those right as I'm winging through those. And for folks, again, if you don't have a time to get up, and we run out of time in terms of answering questions from the microphone or online, please rest assured, continue to submit your questions. We are committed to answering every one of your questions and posting those online within the next couple of weeks. So we're next going to our top 10 questions. We've got number 8 here. This is thanks to urban, and folks want to see, you can see it around the room. Thanks to urban sprawl, pricey GTA housing, many of us are faced with lengthy commutes. What are the plans, if any, to introduce more express trains in order to get people to and from work at a faster pace? Phil?
So clearly, one of our biggest plans to address the mobility of people throughout the region is RER. And what RER brings. And when you think of just today, we opened an increased frequency of services along the Barrie line, where per week we've nearly doubled the number of services from 118 trains per week to 230 trains per week. So 112 extra trains that'll run from the 30th of December onwards. And that is huge capacity increases that allow significant flexibility for people to travel along the GO corridor. So that's really important. That's, we talk so much about the big programs and what will happen in the future. There are things happening as we speak. There are things happening now. And I think it's really important that we convey that to the wider audience out there. I empathize with the impacts on society and pricing in the GTHA of property and housing and how far people have to travel to work. But when you look at what we've done in our regional transportation plan, we've come up with a plan that gives all of that network effects of interconnected LRTs, interconnected bus services, interconnected subway with traditional heavy rail in the form of what we operate as GO, together with a regional bus service that we are very proud of as the GO bus service. And when you look at how that program is starting to get delivered now with what we're doing at Eglinton, Ontario, as well as Hamilton, and soon Finch, we are starting to put that network effect of infrastructure in place that allow people to travel much more significantly than what they do now. And we've got a very interesting 5 years ahead of us, very excited about that, and we are working with all of our transit operators and partners in the region to deliver that.
Next question from the audience. Sir?
Okay, as an introduction, my name is Fred Weingust. I am a member of the South Central York Region Congestion Relief Committee. I had the opportunity to attend the December 7th board meeting, and you should be aware that board meetings are open to the public. I'd like to follow up with Peter and some of the people on the dais today, specifically about a topic that came up during a press scrum afterwards that appeared on City on December the 7th. Where we were talking about the two-fare wall. This is an issue that affects what I call the Metro Belt local transit authorities. Those are the ones that directly touch the TTC. GO Transit has succeeded in October in negotiating a fare reduction. So starting in January, anyone who gets off a GO train and gets onto the TTC subway will be paying $1.50 as opposed to $3. With what Phil just announced today, or what Metrolinx announced today of increasing Barrie, you have now opened up the opportunity for people in the northern part of York Region to use a combination of our local YRT, the agreement between the YRT and GO and TTC, and can actually now, using GO Transit, YRT, and the subway, get to U of T faster than you can by taking the subway straight. A really interesting thing, because as well, the new Downsview Park station that opens up on December 17th or thereabouts. So when Phil talks about a network, he's absolutely right. It's not saying everything is perfect, a lot more work to be done. So here's the question. GO Transit, GO Up has negotiated a double discounted fare, or a discounted double fare. I can't remember whichever order it goes in. That was the very first negotiated agreement with TTC of any transit authority in the world, in the province. Not a single local transit authority that touches the TTC has negotiated on a single fare basis any type of reduction. And the experience that you've had, I was going to ask, one, will you be sharing how that was done with the other local transit authorities that touch the 416 to help them make that negotiation happen? Right now, there is a negotiation happening, and that is for something called the U-Pass. And I'm not sure how many know about these university passes. If you do, put up your hands. There are a few people. At yesterday's board meeting of the TTC, they started to talk about, once again, a university student pass. And that, for the first time, is involving TTC, YRT, and Brampton Transit. Although why they aren't involving Mississauga Transit and Durham, I don't know, because they all deal with students at various campuses of U of T at Scarborough and Arundel. So that is an issue.
Can we get to the question? Sorry.
And the question is this. Not only are we raising an issue, but I'm also going to raise a revenue opportunity. So question one, will you be assisting or directing staff to share lessons learned? And number two, TTC has already touched the third rail, which is charging for parking. And I think there was an earlier question saying, why does it make sense today especially in York Region, to give people $10 off, to take or $10, I should say, it's significantly more off, to try and incent them to go to a free parking lot to then connect. Whereas TTC is charging. And the question is, have you or will Metrolinx be considering in its future financial plans any thought of charging for parking in such a way that those funds can be plowed back into subsidizing or fare supplements?
Great, thank you.
Great question, and I'll Leslie will add to the things I'm going to say. So first of all, can I just remove the myth that we've done something behind closed doors with TTC, and will we now share with other people? The world doesn't work like that, really. The world works as follows. Throughout this region, there are transit people in the different transit operators that are massively committed to get the best for their customers. And everyone focuses on that, and we share and talk really openly. The debate around fare integration, discussion around fare integration has been wide and very thorough, and we have similar arrangements as we have with TTC with other 905 operators as well, as you've referred to and well aware of. And I want to put this in a positive context. Even though there are fare barriers or fare walls, as you refer to, these are all visible to us. Everyone knows that they're there, and we need to get to a place collectively across the region where we can come up with solutions for how we can harmonize our fare policies, give the same discount for the same age groups, and stuff like that. So there's a legacy of decisions that have been taken, and there's now a future which we are going to jointly work in. And one of the things that Leslie and the team are going to put together in the new year with other transit operators are a forum where we are bringing some of these decisions closer for discussion, and where we get more movement, more collective movement on what we do with fares. I'll briefly just pick up on your question on parking and charge for parking and the like. This is not as simple an equation as it feels like. Yeah, parking is a very important part of the equation today in the psychology of people that travel and use transit. So in order to get the right mix of value proposition to people that travel by car, to stop and to use our services, parking is part of that equation. We are constantly looking at how to adjust that equation. We are constantly aware of what's happening with sort of the operators, private sector operators, such as Uber and Lyft and other ride share enterprises out there. We look at autonomous vehicles. We've got a lot that we are constantly focusing on, and we will, as time goes on, adjust our parking policy accordingly. But Leslie may want to add to that.
So I just wanted to, I'll add a couple, 3 things. First, we, on an ongoing basis, act in a very facilitative way with all the transit operators to assist them in discussions, and often we come in to provide advice. In the case of what you're describing between York and the TTC, we are there assisting them. Secondly, the board at a very recent meeting in September directed us very specifically on the removal of barriers to fare integration, and there were 4 specifically, but one in particular is around consistent and coherent policy on products and concessions across the region. So something like a UPass, having a consistent regional approach to how we deal with it, which entails not only the universities that you described, but others. We will be part of that conversation. Phil talked about the forum. That will be part of the discussions. And just on the question of parking in particular, to add to what Phil has said, part of the challenge in terms of the value proposition of alternates to the single occupancy vehicle is ensuring that we have the other choices for first mile, last mile in place to discourage the use of automobiles, and thus reduce the need for parking, and so that it's not as pervasive. So we're working on that front to advance that as well.
Thank you very much. Thanks for that question. We're going to go back to our online community. And for folks watching online, please keep those questions coming. We do make a commitment that we will answer every one within the next couple of weeks if you don't see it up here on screen this evening. This is coming from Dave. When will we see the new Tier 4 diesel locomotives in service?
Thanks, Dave. That's a very specific question. So to correct you a little bit, the Up Express trains are already Tier 4, so we're not new to Tier 4. We've got Tier 2, Tier 3, and the new 16, I'm going to get really techy because your question is, 16 AC traction Tier 4 locomotives. We'll see the first one by the end of this month, another one early in January. They have to do an engine mod in Boise, Idaho on the balance of 16, and then we'll get them as soon as ready.
The gentleman answering that question is our Chief Operating Officer, so he knows all the technical details. We're next going to go to, this is our top 10 list again. When will Presto Funds fully loaded online be immediately accessible? Robert Hollis.
Rob Hollis, who runs the Presto program at Metrolinx. I am so pleased this question came up because it gives me an opportunity to explain why it is the way it is. So first of all, your Presto card, to understand how it works, your funds and your passes that you load at TTC or any of the other transit agencies reside on this card. And the reason for that is when you tap a fare getter, you tap a bus reader, in less than half a second that transaction's occurring. We don't have time to go up and down on a network like a retailer to get that answer. So it was designed purposely to have it in your wallet in this card. So therefore, the challenge is how do you get your funds and your passes onto this card? So if you go to the 93 Shoppers Drug Marts we've deployed across Toronto in the last year, it's instantly on your card. So you can go into Shoppers, go out and tap on a streetcar, happens real time. You can also do that if you go to a customer service outlet. You can also do that if you use one of our self-service reload machines that are downstairs and in some of the selected stations and will be deployed everywhere in the next year. Also, and my favorite is if you actually give us a credit card, debit card, you can put auto load on this card and you never have to think about it again. It's automatically reloaded, and when you tap a reader, if you're out of funds, it automatically gives you a ride and loads the funds. So those are the ideal ways of getting money on your card. The challenge is when you load funds on the web. So when you load funds on the web, we have to move that load from our central system down to all the 15,000 readers in our system so that the next time you tap that reader, we load the funds. So in the case of TTC, in the case of Ottawa, in the case of Go Transit platforms, within 4 hours, that load you made on the web ends up on your card. You can tap within 4 hours. Unfortunately, at this point, because of the earlier deployment on Go Transit and the GTHA buses, those buses don't connect to our central system until they go back to their garage at the start or end of day. So if you do a load in the middle of the day and you go and tap on a York bus, that load's still waiting to get pushed down to that bus because it hasn't been back to the garage. Now that's going to be fixed in the next 2 years because we're upgrading all the Go equipment and all the equipment in the GTHA buses so that you'll have the same cellular connection to those buses so that we can move the loads out in 4 hours, and we're looking at actually moving that down to 2 hours so it's even more instantaneous. So as I said at the outset, there are many ways you can get funds on the card now. We're very happy to have Shoppers Network as a complement to our way of loading funds. We have more and more of our self-serve reload machines showing up, so it only gets better during this year. So I hope that answers the question and maybe dispels some of the myths that folks have around why does it take 24 hours? It's only in those limited circumstances that it could take up to 24 hours. So thank you for that question.
Thanks for that answer, Rob, very much. Next question from our audience.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. My name's Rosemary Frey, and I wanted to talk, ask specifically you, Mr. Verster, about contracting. You said that the way the triple Ps work, that a lot of the risk goes on to the private partner in that. But as we've seen, say, with Presto, there's been a tremendous increase in cost in that. A lot of that cost has come to us, and we don't see a lot of, say, accountability at Metrolinx. When I went to the Metrolinx board meeting, I think the second last one, there was a $100 million cost overrun, and Mr. Pritchard said to Mr. Hollis, I think it was, good job. And I interviewed, have a brief interview with Yaron Koch, he was at the Metrolinx Transportation Symposium a couple of months ago. And he was talking about public-private partnerships and contracting. He said that Metrolinx, he's actually contracted with Metrolinx. And I asked him about public-private partnerships, and he said that Metrolinx is doing bad contracting. They're not, in fact, anywhere close to shifting enough of the risk onto the public sector. Onto the private sector. So is he wrong, or are you wrong? One of you, you're both experts. And there's a lot, I mean, Ontario is already the most indebted non-sovereign jurisdiction in the world. There's a lot of money at stake, and it's not just a triviality. There's a lot of money. So this is a serious matter, and who's wrong in this equation?
Thank you for the question. Phil?
So when you look at P3s are, or public-private partnerships, or PPPs, or whatever you'd like to call it, you can discuss and you can discuss the merits and demerits of how funding is provided for large infrastructure projects, and you can discuss it from both angles. And there are different views, and if you think of economic policy, what a government decides is the level of debt that is sustainable to fund infrastructure investment, because there are economic benefits, both transit as well as wider economic benefits that go with an investment pattern into the future, is a discussion quite different to a discussion about transit. When you look at where we are as a transit authority, where we have an insatiable demand for transit to be more effective as a medium to connect communities, I think there's probably little, as I see it, probably little debate about the necessity to invest in transit. Sorry, hang on.
Answer my question. Whether he's wrong,
hang
or
on.
you're not doing bad contracting.
Hang on. So you've asked the question. So I'll answer it. So let's stay with that original contract that we had, that we listen to questions. So we listen to questions and we answer, give you a good overview of what you were asking. You asked me about P3s and indebtedness in the province, and I thought I'd start with that. So I think the focus on investment is where we need to be in terms of our implementation plans, which we've put to government and which government has approved. If we think about P3 contracts and how we manage P3 contracts, and you look at what we're doing with the RER now, which is the contract which is under our control, we've focused that on a DBFOM procurement model. That DBFOM procurement model totally ring fences all of the system integration risks into a single contract position. And so when we go to market with that, we get consortia that bid back solutions that take all of the risks into consideration. Now that model is a model that works, and it works throughout the world, and it's a model that we will follow here to the letter. If you look at a very practical model out there, it's currently in implementation, which is Eglinton, where it's not a DBFOM, where the procurement of the rolling. Sorry, please. Can we just please? Can we just stay with the method here as we've discussed before the meeting started? So you ask a question, we try to answer that. So, okay, so I'll do that. So, but please, let me just follow through and give you the answer. Yeah. So design, build, finance, operate, and maintain is a form of public-private partnership contract. So if you look at Eglinton, which is not a design, build, finance, operate, and maintain contract, where the rolling stock was procured separately, it has opened up quite a lot of system integration risks, which have made its way to a very public disagreement between Bombardier, Metrolinx, as well as, to be honest, for our broader contract of delivering Eglinton. So I think there are ways where you can deliver PPPs, or public-private partnership contracts, in a way which is more successful because it manages the risk better. That's exactly what we're doing with RER. RER is a huge, significant program, and we're doing that the right way. On contracts that have been in flight before because of historical contractual positions, which we understand as well. We're setting about on Eglinton, and we're fixing the challenges that we have there to make sure we deliver Eglinton as quickly as possible. In terms of your question about having spoken to someone that said to someone else about whether Metrolinx is doing P3 contracts well enough or not, I'm not sure why the person said it. I'm not sure what information they had, and I'm willing to listen to that. Can I? Yeah. Well, so I could say the Transportation Minister for Holland is probably very informed about quite a lot of issues. And if there are things about our contract that he wants to share with us, or our contracts or lessons we can learn, we are always open to learn. And we've been very, very clear in terms of our response. We've reported publicly on our response to, for example, findings by the Auditor General in terms of how we manage contracts. And we're very transparent. Where there are things in our contracts that have not worked well, we'll put actions in place to correct that. So these contracts are really important. They're really complicated. And we have a very open and transparent approach to learn from those and to put processes in place to make these contracts work better. And we stand by that. And when I go to public committee and standing committees about our contracts, I will very openly share our lessons in terms of what contracts we have learned lessons from and what we'll do differently. Very practical.
Thank you for that question, and feel free to stay after the meeting. I'm sure that Peter Zook would be more than happy to get further into detail if you wanted on that. Anyways, we're going to take, this will be a final question for this evening, folks. This is coming up from our online community. Can we speed up the So respect that. We had made, let me speak to that. We had made commitments that we would be finishing this evening at 7:30. We also made commitments that any questions that come to us from the audience or online, you can ask them after the meeting to folks who stay, or you can submit them online and we will answer them publicly within a couple of weeks. So So you have our commitment that we will answer the question within a couple of weeks. Okay, thank you. And we're going to finish this with one question here, and we're happy to speak to you after the question. My colleague Raj is right behind, and we're happy to speak with you. Sorry, final question. Can we speed up the Kitchener line? Via was much faster, offered Wi-Fi, and I didn't have to stand for 40 minutes to get a seat. This is coming from Mike.
I preferred the Tier 4 question, but anyway. So speed up, I'm going to take the question literally. Can the trains move faster on the Kitchener line? So I can explain the background to that. So we bought the Kitchener line from Georgetown to Kitchener, going back 3 years now. We actually, it was under lease from CN to the GXR Railway. So we actually fully take that over in October of 2018. That's a single line corridor. You can't go that fast on that corridor because there is a level crossing, 30 level crossings between Georgetown and Kitchener. So you have limited speed ability there. What the plan is, though, is to double track that corridor. And once you double track that corridor, and that we won't do that until, first of all, you have to build it, resignal it. But we're waiting until we fully own it in October 18 to advance that work. And that work also has to connect with the work further south towards Toronto. So there's different pieces of work there that all have to sync with each other. So the plan is to speed it up. Right now it's 2 hours and 5 minutes from Kitchener to Toronto. That's unacceptable in today's world. You can almost drive it faster. But it is convenient, it is consistent, it is comfortable, but it's simply not fast enough. You're absolutely right. Until such time as you actually invest in the capacity that can make it faster, we would ask your patience to give us a chance to get it there. But I absolutely agree with you that it's nowhere near fast enough, and it will be much faster. But it's going to take probably, by the time you design it and build it, probably talking about 5 years from now.
Thank you, everyone, and thanks, Greg, for that. Folks, that concludes our formal part of our meeting tonight, and thank you very, very much for your participation and for joining us here, both in the audience and online. Want to reiterate the commitment that we did make, that we will continue to take questions. There'll be folks from Metrolinx who'll be hanging around here a little bit who can answer questions with you or speak with you after the meeting. Or if you'd like to just provide us with your contact details, we'll be sure to get back to you. Please continue to submit your questions online, and we will commit to get back in those questions, answers to those questions posted within a couple of weeks. So thank you again, and I'm going to give the final word to Metrolinx.
Can I just say thank you to everyone for attending? We will continue to do these as a first event. I appreciate very much the contributions everyone made. I hope it was sort of a two-way conversation rather than a one-way conversation. And just say thank you very much for supporting and being passionate about transit. That's what we like. And so we have a lot more in common with you than what you may think. Thank you very much.